All right, so let's get started. So hello, everyone. I am Kelsey Lemon, Senior Technical Marketing Manager here at VMware, and I want to welcome you to this session on how to use the Insights API in Skyline Advisor Pro to unlock the benefits that it provides when you leverage it to automate some common workflows. And assisting me today, we have product marketing managers Michelle Clompton and Marlene Jenkins, as well as Sunny Nguyen, who's a Senior Technical Marketing Engineer. And Sonny, I got to give you a shout out, my friend. You're going above and beyond today because you're on vacation. So thank you for joining us today. And they're all going to be monitoring our Q&A pod and answering your questions. So make sure that you use the Q&A option at the bottom of the screen there. And speaking of Q&A, we've got some questions that we'd like to ask you in order to facilitate today's discussion. So if you can just launch the poll, that'd be awesome. And so as you can see here, we've got a series of questions here in terms of what's your current level of VMware support? Obviously, we'd like to know if you're currently using Skyline or not, and if so, how many people on your team are doing so. We'd like to know what your favorite feature is. Hopefully, if Insights API isn't in your top 3, hopefully after this session it will be. We'd like to know if you've acted on any of Skyline's proactive findings and recommendations. And last but not least, which of the following systems do you use? Oh, as well as where do you live on social media? What tool or choice do you use most frequently, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Reddit, and what have you. So I'm going to give you all a minute to go through those 7 questions. And speaking of 7, today's lucky 7, right? So isn't today St. Patrick's Day?
Yeah, it sure is.
So I forgot to mention that. Yeah, I forgot to wear green. So.
Oh, right. But I am wearing spring colors.
Oh,
so.
Okay. All right.
I didn't think about that.
I went completely the opposite. I'm like totally contrary to green right now. So please
okay,
forgive
I'm
me.
representing the green here.
There we go. I was wondering about that.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for doing that. Good call. Good call. All right. So it looks like folks are about to wrap up on their questions in the poll. So we'll give it 30 seconds, I suppose. So everybody, this is just want to let you know, go ahead and finish up those last few questions, and then I'm going to end the poll.
And if you could read those results, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Oh, wow, they're coming in fast. Come on, folks.
Come on.
All right, in 3, 2, 1, now. All right, and let me share those results with everybody so they can see. All right, so majority of the folks today have premier support level. That's good to know. And yes, 75% of the audience is currently using Skyline, so this is great. And then about 1 to 5 people on their team is using Skyline. The #1 favorite feature of Skyline is, drumroll, log assist. Surprise. Let's see what came in second. Came in second with Skyline Insights Reports.
Nice.
I know, we like that. Okay, and then have any of them acted on proactive findings and recommendations? 67% of you said yes. And then, so the following systems that most of them use, ServiceNow coming in second was Jira. And the #1 social media that they live on is LinkedIn. Coming in second is Twitter.
Good deal.
All right.
All this stuff's awesome. So thank you for that. So some good insights there. We're actually going to be showing you how you can actually link the Insights API to ServiceNow. And so you definitely want to hang on for that. And so perfect. And so here's our agenda today, right? And so for those of you who are new to the service, I'm going to quickly describe what it is and how it can benefit you. And then we're going to talk about how you can actually leverage the API tool by, we're going to do a couple things. Obviously we're going to define what an API is. We're going to talk about its advantages. We're going to show you how to access the Insights API in Skyline Advisor Pro. And then we're going to end with some common use cases, including ServiceNow, right? To show you how you can leverage the tool to make your life easier. And for those of you who can stay to the very end of the session, I'm going to show you how you can get access to the Skyline Automation Toolkit. You're going to want to definitely hang on for that. And so let's just jump right in, right, and talk about the Skyline service itself by answering the question, what is Skyline? And so, to answer that question, right, we've got to set some context about the overall support experience. And I'm sure you all can relate to, right? So here it goes. As a customer, I'm sure you're all very familiar with the traditional sort of reactive scenario, right? You experience an issue in your environment, you open an SR with VMware, then our tech support team troubleshoots, and then they work with you to solve that issue, right? Well, VMware Skyline is actually sort of the next step in that process. It's a proactive support technology, meaning that it can actually help you avoid issues before they happen, so you don't even have the problem in the first place. Skyline also helps resolve existing issues faster. So say, for example, if you have a case open with us, our tech support engineers can use Skyline to view your environment-specific configuration, and then they can use data-driven analytics to speed discovery and ultimately drive faster resolution times. And as a matter of fact, Skyline's automated detection and proactive remediation guidance, right? It can actually help you strengthen your environments. And so with the service, you can avoid IT downtime, and then you can actually reallocate that time to do more valuable work. But here's the best part, right? Skyline, for those of you who are using it, you're already aware of this. It's available at no additional cost with your active production or premier support contracts. And I'm also happy to say that Skyline is also included with Success 360 and vRealize Cloud Universal subscriptions. And speaking of environment configurations, right, Skyline supports all the products listed here. And these capabilities, right, they're really driving, value to customers like yourselves. We're hearing that Skyline helps our customers avoid constantly being in firefighting mode, right? Our customers are reducing that very costly downtime, which is often caused by misconfigurations. And that increased network reliability actually translates into less time fixing errors. And so, as you can see here from a recent industry report, right, 1 hour downtime for an enterprise averages around $500,000. And companies who are strategically sort of making that decision, right, to take a more proactive approach to support, they're significantly reducing that unplanned downtime. So we're talking about hundreds of hours here. And to date, right, Skyline has helped over 12,000 plus customers identify nearly 90 million objects in their environments with potential issues. And our customers have proactively resolved more than 60% of those on their own. And when there are times, right, where you may need to actually react to an issue that you didn't proactively resolve, right, Skyline can actually support you here as well through our log assist feature, which I saw was #1. And for those of you who are using it, just a little bit of metrics there. It's actually 17 times faster than the manual sort of log upload and transfer process. And again, even that, right, that translates into nearly 100,000 hours saved. And so if you've done the traditional log transfer process, right, I'm sure you can all relate to how slow that is. So log assist removes that pain by giving you, again, that very valuable time back to do more meaningful work. So how does Skyline work for those of you who are unfamiliar with the service? You're looking to get more information about it, right? So how does it work to enable these benefits, right? So got to do a couple of things. So first, you have to install and configure this lightweight appliance called the Skyline Collector into your environment. And then once that collector is installed and configured to your endpoint, it actually starts to listen, right, to start collecting product usage data. And then based on this data, Skyline performs a comprehensive analysis of your environment details. And then at that point, Skyline begins to act to provide you those proactive findings and recommendations via a web-based portal. And of course, whenever I discuss how the collector works, I inevitably get questions about security. So let's just go into it, right? So when you activate Skyline, you consent to participate in our enhanced customer experience improvement program, otherwise known as CIP. And basically what that does is it actually allows us to collect configuration, feature usage, performance data, as well as give us an opportunity to give you recommendations, whether it's the insights and support, and all that's being done in an effort to really drive product improvement. I should also point out that the data that we collect is transmitted to us using TLS 1.2 encryption protocols, and product uses data is sent to VMware storage platform, and it's encrypted both in transit and at rest. I should also point out that, and I get this question a lot, right? All the data is tagged with legally identifiable customer information, and access to that information is limited to VMware employees and support and management, and they must all undergo training as well as receive manager approval. Last but not least, no personally identifiable information, that PII, right, is collected. But with that said, right, you shouldn't enter personal or sensitive data when you're naming things like your dashboards, or you're naming your systems, your ESXi hosts, virtual machines and dashboards and the like. And also get this question, I should also point out, as you can see on the screen, Skyline is SOC 2 compliant. And so with that, let's just dive right in and ask, and really sort of just talk about and really define what an API is and what it does. And so, obviously, chances are, if you're in the industry, right, you know that API stands for Application Programming Interface. And in a nutshell, right, an API is both a piece of software running on a network server and a component of programming code, right? APIs provide a secure and standardized way for applications to work with each other, and they automate the retrieval and even the updating of information without the need to go into the GUI, right? That graphical user interface. So for example, right, your company may have a monitoring tool or process that reports potential sort of, environment vulnerabilities, and even track, right, their recommended fixes. And it may actually be your job, to manually search and prioritize these potential issues and send all of this data into a ticketing system like Jira, ServiceNow, or even Pager Duty, so that your entire team can be aware of what's being remediated, right? And while something like this may not be an issue in a small environment that may have, say, for example, like a dozen or so items to manually enter, think about that productivity sink, right? If you have a few dozen of them on a full-blown production environment that's operating at scale. Well, with an API, you can actually eliminate the manual intervention on your part and send that data directly to those ticketing systems. And we're going to be talking about that and even demonstrating that a little bit later here. And so with that being said, right, that's really when the advantages of the API start to become clear. So let's go ahead and talk about that. And so as you can already imagine, right, APIs can really help increase productivity. The scenario that I just described, could be developed as an application. But if that data is already exposed as an API, you wouldn't have to build a new tool from the ground up, thereby, it's going to save you very valuable development time and really enable your company to realize its business goals faster. And, speaking of productivity benefits, right, the API provides a way of helping automate some of these common tasks. And so there's that monetary component tied to it as well. APIs basically, like I said, can save you money. And since APIs significantly reduce development effort, using them to create an application is really effective in using costs. With APIs, developers can fetch most of the data they need to integrate in other systems without the need from starting from scratch. So instead of spending, precious resources and time on reinventing the wheel, they can use cost-effective APIs from third-party providers like us, right? And, a little bit of interesting information I sort of came across right before this webinar here, just according to recent research, developing and deploying an app, once you've factored in the time for prototyping, going into beta, and ultimately delivering and maintaining that app can range anywhere from $20,000 to $140,000. And then last but not least, right, APIs and the automation that they drive can really sort of improve connectivity, collaboration, and communication within an enterprise. And since the APIs, sort of core functionality is connectivity, they enable different systems and applications and platforms to connect and share data with one another and perform, various types of functions, which quite frankly is essential in today's world, right? Where it's estimated that, again, an average company runs about over 400 custom applications. So, Without APIs, all these tools and the benefits that they provide could be siloed without that connectivity, right? Which again, reduces their impact on your business's bottom line. And with that being said, right, so let's just go. So basically what I'm saying here is that the net, right, is that all these different advantages is that APIs and the automations can really sort of help drive innovation. So through APIs, businesses can really introduce, cutting edge technologies with fewer resources, adapt to requirements faster, like meeting SLAs, and even introduce new ways to grow your business. So with that, let's talk about APIs and automation in the context of Skyline Advisor Pro. So, customers, like you have said, in the past, and we've made this possible today, right? That they wanted to do more than just view Skyline's findings and recommendations. They wanted something that would really allow them to sort of take action on these findings and recommendations. So we provided this ability with our Insights API. With it, you can take Skyline finding data and you can extract it, via an API into the tooling of your choice to automate whatever you want, right? So for example, you want to create a ticket out of a finding, not a problem. You want to use, configuration or automation tools, you can go ahead and code away. You want to send all your findings to Slack, done, right? So the bottom line is that with the Insights API, Skyline Advisor Pro can connect all these different teams together. So whether you're a sysadmin or SRE or an IT manager, the Insights API can really enable all of you to sort of work together, automate common workflows, and even give everyone on your team, again, that very valuable time back to do more meaningful work. And so with that, right, let's talk about how you can access the Insights API in Skyline Advisor Pro. So to activate the Insights API feature in Skyline Advisor Pro, you need to do two things. You need to generate an API token and generate an access token. And in order to generate an API token, you must satisfy the prerequisite of being a Skyline member of an organization with the API user service role enabled. And you can verify this by going into your account and checking the service roles. And once you've verified that you have the API user service role enabled, you can actually generate an API token. And it's a pretty straightforward process. Simply give the token a name, accept the default 6 months as a token expiration date, and then finally associate that token with the developer role in your organization. And then once that API token is generated, make sure that you save it because it's only generated once. And if you lose it, basically you have to generate another one. And now with the API token in place, you can generate the access token, which is what you'll need to retrieve findings data in Skyline for integration into the other tools that you're leveraging. Access tokens can be generated using Curl or PowerCLI. And I'm going to be using Curl in this example. So let's take a look at the syntax here, right? So basically this Curl command is hitting the console server. And notice that the syntax says your access token. You're going to need to replace that with the API token code that was generated and saved earlier. And when basically you run the Curl command, you're going to get a larger alphanumeric code. And this actually is the access token. So now let's go back into Skyline Advisor Pro so that we can use that access token to retrieve findings data in the GraphQL user interface. And to do this, you're going to click on the API Explorer. And if you try to extract findings data without entering the access token, you're going to get an error. So let's enter the access token by adding an authorization header, where the bearer is the access token key. Simply paste it into the code. And with that access token in place, you can run the GraphQL to start pulling your findings data, as you can see right here. And with that, you can also extract findings directly from the command line, again, either using Curl or PowerCLI. I'm going to use Curl again so that we can look at the syntax. And you'll need to set your API token variable to equal that alphanumeric API token code that you generated and saved earlier. You're going to set the Skyline access variable to the console that will get you your access token. And then you're going to set the Skyline API to the location listed here, which is where you're going to get your API data. And the rest of the syntax, right, that's just Curl's commands that's going to generate your active findings, where you can specify a lot of stuff. You can specify the number of findings, the finding ID, supporting KB articles, recommendations, level of severity, affected objects, versions, build numbers. So basically you get the idea. You can do a lot here in terms of just customizing exactly what you want. And when you run the command, as you can see here, it's going to look exactly like the output that we got from the GraphQL user interface. And with that, I'm going to pause for a second, Michelle, to see if you've got any questions about that piece. We've got our API guru, Sunny, on board, so I want to make sure we take advantage of his time again. He's on vacation, but he's here helping us out.
Yeah, Kelsey, you must be doing a really good job because we don't have any questions coming through at this time, but I would definitely encourage everyone to go ahead and put their questions in the Q&A box.
Everything that I learned from Sunny. So, so, all right, so let's just go ahead and keep it moving, right? So, hey, but what good is an API without some practical examples, right? So let's go ahead and walk through a few. You're going to see a lot of code. I'm going to just put that out there, but fear not. While I'm going to be keeping a brisk pace, I'm going to point you all to all the documentation that is needed to replicate the workflows that I'm showing here, as well as show you again how to get some of these sample scripts at the end of the webinar. And so with that said, right, we're going to take a look at how you can leverage the API to do those three things. Again, increase your productivity, save your business money, and last but not least, better connect your teams. So with that being said, right, an API and the automation that it provides, it can really help, you manage your environments at scale. And again, save you a lot of time. Often Skyline will provide a recommendation that can address potential issues that could impact as many as 30 objects at once, right? And trying to address them all individually just really wouldn't be a productive use of time, quite frankly. And here's another very interesting statistic here. 60% of availability and performance errors are caused by misconfigurations. But here's the good news. Automation through scripting could reduce that number significantly. So let's take a look at this critical NTP issue, and if this issue isn't addressed, the stability of my environment can be compromised. And luckily there's a fix for this. There's a KB article, right, that describes exactly what I need to do in order to self-remediate without opening an SR at VMware. So I'm going to export these findings into a CSV file, as it's going to play a major role a bit later. But what I want you to do is make note of the vCenter name, the 6 EXXI hosts, and the KB number. And now I'm going to log right into my vSphere client, and I can see the vCenters. I can see the 6 EXXI hosts where Skyline has detected a potential issue. And as you can see here, NTP isn't configured properly. Now, I've copied over, right, that same CSV file that I exported from Skyline so that it resides locally here. And this machine only has Notepad installed, which is why the file looks different, but the data is exactly the same. But here's the fun part, right? Here's the script I'm going to use. And as you can see, it's just a few lines of code. Basically, the script has set variables for the vCenter name, the host, and the KB article that it's going to pull from that CSV file that I exported earlier. And then it's going to assign an IP address to the NTP servers, start the service, and then set the time. And since this CSV file has 6 objects, it's going to do this 6 times, right? So one script, 6 remediations. And with that, right, we're talking about a huge productivity boost here. And again, this is an awesome script that Sunny wrote that I was able to leverage to create this. And now to the other benefit, right? So as I mentioned before, APIs and automation can save money. And so now we're going to take a look at an example of how you can use the Insights API to do exactly that. So as you know, right, Skyline's finding and recommendations come in 3 finding types. You got config recommendations, upgrade recommendations, and troubleshooting recommendations, right? And as you can imagine, configuration and upgrade changes are really ideal for automation through API and scripting. So let's take a look at how Skyline's Insights API can be leveraged to remediate a common issue: too many snapshots. right? And so when I click on this finding, I can see the hosts and the VMs that need to be addressed, as well as a recommended KB that describes really the best practices for consolidating the snapshots. So I'm going to log into my client and I'm going to confirm that my snapshots do need to be deleted. So now let's take a look at the findings data that I extracted via the API, and I'm going to combine that with the script that combines, again, a few lines of codes that connect the vCenters, identify the VM, delete the snapshots, and then close out. So let's go ahead and run the code. And then once that code's been executed, I can confirm that the snapshots from my VMs have been deleted. And then last but not least, right, again, that Skyline, that Insights API, it can really sort of connect teams and really improve collaboration. And so let's talk about that, especially around these ticketing systems. So let's take a look at how you can leverage the Insights API and some scripting to send findings directly to a ticketing system. So in this example, I'm going to be using Pager Duty, but we have scripts in place that will allow you to send findings data to Slack, Jira, and ServiceNow as well. So with that, right, what I want to do is I just want to go over and just take a look at the code. So I'm going to create a ticket that includes the finding ID, the name of the source and the host, as well as a KB article. Now, in order to integrate this with PagerDuty, I'll need to specify PagerDuty's API location as well as my PagerDuty ID and token. So now basically, I'm just going to run the script. I'm going to send my findings directly to PagerDuty, where I can acknowledge receipt after the incident has been triggered. And as you can see, this incident is sending all the information needed for anyone on my team to really start that remediation process. So it's going to see things and show things like the name of the finding, the name of the manager, the NSX manager, the impacted object, and even the KB that actually shows how to fix that incident. And then finally, let's take a look at how the Skyline Advisor Pro can connect teams through its API integrates with ServiceNow. As you can see, I currently don't have any incidents, but I'm going to change that by leveraging the API to connect to the service. So let's take a look at the data that I extracted via the API. And again, I've used the same method that I showed earlier in the presentation. Again, you can use either Curl or PowerCLI to pull this data via the API. But the key things that I'm pulling are the finding ID, the source, the host name, and the KB article, right? And then at that point, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to integrate this into ServiceNow. So I'm going to be adding a short description, defining the urgency, the impact, and last but not least, a watch list, right? So now what I'm going to do basically is I'm going to just run the command where I'm going to send this particular finding to ServiceNow. And after I'm prompted to enter my password, the information is compiled and an incident number 10012 is generated. And now if I toggle over to ServiceNow, I can see that that incident is appearing in my watch list and all the information that I specified is there for someone to act on. And so with that, right, that basically concludes our session. I'm going to show you how to get access to the tools in a minute, but I just want to wrap things up by just talking about, again, how leveraging APIs and automation through Skyline Advisor Pro can increase your productivity, save your money, and connect teams. And again, in all of those, when you look at all of that collectively, again, enables you to drive innovation for your business. And so with that, I hope you found this session informative. And as I promised, be sure to check out the official documentation, right? So if you're an existing customer, all you got to do is just go to the documentation link in the product. And if you're not using Skyline, you can access the documentation on VMware Code. Simply click on the API option and select the link for Advisor Pro. Once you're there, you're going to get an overview of REST APIs and GraphQL terminologies. You're going to learn, again, how you can get your authorization tokens and define schema. You're going to have the ability to execute queries like the ones that I demonstrated today, and even sample scripts. And with that, if you want to check out our API with some of these sample scripts that I showed today, I highly encourage you all to sort of check out the Skyline Automation Toolkit that was created by Sonny Gued, Senior Technical Marketing Engineer. This toolkit allows cloud admins and SREs to really sort of automate Skyline Advisor Pro's proactive intelligence and integrate that with a tool of your choice. Now, in terms of what's happening underneath the hood, right? The toolkit itself leverages VMware PowerShell modules to really help you update and configure VMware infrastructure. The toolkit is a VMware Fling. And for those of you who are unaware, VMware Flings is a program, in the office of the CTO, right? That really enables anyone at VMware to sort of release off roadmap experimental tools directly to customers like yourselves. And while Flings are not officially supported, and again, shouldn't be used in a production environment, Fling developers like Sunny do appreciate your feedback and requests, comments, through these release updates. And currently the toolkit itself consists of 4 different packages. You have the Skyline Fixer, which is a script that reviews Skyline Advisor findings and recommendations and exports it all via CSV file, and you can actually use that to implement remediation next steps. There's also a module called Skyline Com, which is a script that sends Skyline findings data to Slack, Jira, Pager Duty, and other management reporting services. There's also a module or a package known as Skyline Helper, which again is a script that really sort of ensures a proper connection between your product endpoints and the Skyline collector. And be on the lookout for a future webinar about that, about the importance of making sure that you get all your endpoints connected. And then finally, there's a last module here known as the Skyline Docker, which builds additional infrastructure to really sort of help support those findings and recommendations beyond the VMware suite. And for more information on that, be sure to go to the URL listed on this page. And I'm going to pause again because I believe we're at the end, Michelle, Marlene, and Sunny, so we can open it up for any questions if there are any.
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. So I did also just put the link into the chat
Awesome.
to the toolkit. We do have a question from Gopi for the NTP example. Rather than getting the finding and running the script to fix it, will it be better to have auto remediation in place?
Good question. I'm going to throw that one to Sunny.
Sure. I mean, that is a great idea, but the only gotcha at the moment is Skyline Advisor is only a read-only product that provides you insights on your problem. We do have customers who are using the, for example, VRoutes plugin to also connect to either VRO or anything else, so that way they can mitigate those little risks. But once again, it gets a little bit complex, but rest assured that that's definitely some of the things that we're looking into. And the Fling is just one of those examples of, yes, it is a script, but at least it helps you work on some of the smaller tasks.
Certainly, I'm just going to chime in here. This is Blair. I run product management for the Skyline service. With the APIs, nothing prevents you from setting up a script that, maybe you do once a day checks, once a week checks, however frequently you want. When that finding is found, you could instrument automatic remediation. So you write the script that does the remediation routine like Kelsey showed, and you could have it set up to just listen. When you catch it, just go do it, right? You could absolutely do that on your own. From our side, in a product direction perspective, we think the ability to self-heal is advantageous. So we are exploring opportunities to do so, certainly in concert with the vRealize product suite. It's a nice complementary add between Skyline and vRealize Operations, Orchestrator, and vRealize Automation. And of course, SaltStack as well. So you'll probably hear more on that as far as how we may take automated remediations into the service itself. That is still a future directional conversation. If you have any feedback or guidance or support of that, please do share that with folks like myself and this team. It strengthens our resolve as we try and define solutions that matter, specifically in that space.
And welcome, Blair. I didn't know you were in the audience. Thanks for the assist.
Yeah, I'm on the panel. I can talk.
Yes, nice. And I will say, if anyone has a detailed question and they want to talk rather than type, just raise your hand and I can unmute you. But we do have a question from Douglas. Does Skyline have the ability to report or display a finding where the root password is about to expire or has expired?
Let me take that one. Not today. I'm assuming you mean specifically the root password of the Skyline collector. That is where we ourselves do see some customers calling and saying, what happened? I didn't know this was a thing. We're in active conversations right now on how we're going to help solve that. So I would say not today, but soon we will help address that for you.
Thanks, Blair. Okay, we'll give another just a few seconds if anyone else has a burning question to ask. Not seeing any coming in. So I think we can wrap up for today.
Great.
Thanks,
Thanks
everybody.
everyone for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Sunny. Thanks, Blair, Marlene, Michelle. See ya.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, Kelsey.